Line is the first agenda item. How are you, Bill?
I'm great. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you as
Good.
well. So we only have 3 agenda items today. So the first item is we have the ATM coming up. And so I think we've got some members on here who've been to a special town meeting, but have not been through an annual town meeting. And we've done the work of handing off the liaison assignments, but liaising is just starting up. So I thought maybe you could walk us through the calendar and talk to us about how the spring is going to go.
Great. So were you able to share the calendar with everyone?
No,
Paul?
it just came today. What I can do, well, if I knew how to share a screen on Zoom, you want me to share it? Yeah, hang on a sec.
Do you have the ability to do that from your computer? Oh, there we go.
I don't know. How's that look?
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Excellent.
Impressive.
That makes it very easy. All right. So, so you can see there's a lot of things that happen between now and until before the town meeting, which actually occurs. The annual business meeting occurs on May 9th of 2022. So, the process for us began back in October when we had the first joint meeting of the town, school, and AdCom to talk about, or actually leadership, and then we had the forecast review with everybody, and then sat down and started to develop some guidance for the budget process. We're at the stage right now, as you can see from as of Tuesday yesterday, we were able to send out the documents to the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen get the document first. They get the opportunity to review it, and then I make a presentation to them on January 18th, which is next Tuesday night. I then wait for their recommendations back to me, and then I provide it to the AdCom based upon what their input is. And so then you have the ability to then take that and start working with the document at that point. So so the initial review process begins for you on January 26th. We will have the budget to you as soon as I can get it to you, obviously, but I need to have the input from the Board of Selectmen before I can forward it to you at that point. So what we are, you know, from what I can give you, if you want to see a preliminary review of what the balance of what the budget is, it's a balanced budget at this point. Well, you can see that, you can follow it along on the presentation on Tuesday night, January 18th, and you'll see at that point where we are. I can tell you our guidance this year was to try and get to a 2.5% budget, which was, it was extraordinary effort to try and get to that point, but we came very, very close. We got to about 2.73%, which is the lowest recommended budget I've had since I've been here. It is the third sub 3% budget that I've presented in 3 years. So we're in the right track and on the right goals. What's happened? What's missing from those estimates, though, is 2 major elements, and that is the health insurance estimate, which I've yet to see, nor have I seen the risk management or general insurance budget estimates, which are big ticket items. So they could, if the numbers come in better than what we've projected them to be, we could be close to that 2.5% budget, which is obviously something that's been one of the. I don't know if anybody's ever presented a 2.5% budget, at least in recent memory. So we're going to do something this year, which will be quite extraordinary if we pull it off.
We've had some good outcomes on the insurance the last couple of years, right? So
we have, and the preliminary indication, I actually serve on the Maya Board of Directors, so I can tell you that preliminarily our the recommendation for rate increase was a 0% increase, but that doesn't mean we'll get a 0 increase in terms of budget, because there were a lot of moving parts to that. One is the fact we added on the now completed borough school to that list. That gets removed and it gets put back on in the revised format, that revised revision or revised building that we just completed. And then also we also have to take a look at, on the health insurance side, or the actually workers' comp side, we have to see how our claims come in on that, so that could actually move up those numbers, or move the numbers either upwards or downwards, depending upon where things go. But so at least the preliminary, the information, the news is good, but I don't know what the final number is going to be yet.
Okay.
I'm hoping to have those numbers by as early as next week. So I may have that information even before the presentation on the 18th. As far as the health, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Dennis Gill.
Yeah, sure, Dennis. Hi, Dennis.
Is it too early for you to know the experience mod for the workers' comp?
Well, I can tell you that the mod went down last year, and so I have every reason to believe it's going to stay down this year because we haven't had a lot of claims.
Right.
So I think we should be okay. If as you know from being in the industry, that if it's below 1, then you're in pretty good shape. And if you get above 1, then it obviously has an impact on the overall cost.
Right.
So we're trying to stay 1 or below, and if we can get to that point, it should have a positive impact on our rates. On the health insurance side, we're carrying about a 2.75% increase. I think, quite honestly, that Omicron, there's a silver lining in Omicron, and that it's now, because it's so significant, it's having an effect upon people doing elective surgeries. And I think that could actually keep the cost of health insurance down again for a second year. We did see a little bit of a spike earlier in the year. I think it was probably sometime between July and September. But then since that time, a lot of the hospitals are canceling these elective surgeries. So, and that's where they make their money, and that's where the rates go up. I think Dennis knows that as well. Those have a big impact upon those costs. So hopefully that will keep the cost of health insurance down for another year, and maybe even result in last year we actually we got money back because our rates were so good, our experience was so good. So hopefully that'll be the case. We then move into the review process, and the advisory committee and the liaisons will go through the budget request. The warrant will officially close on February 15th. We then submit a draft warrant to the Board of Selectmen for review and consideration to include each article on the warrant. I'm not seeing a whole lot of warrant articles come in this year, so hopefully it won't be that complicated of a warrant to review. So far, we see the preliminary deadline is January 15th, but so far we haven't seen a lot of stuff come in.
So they have to have a placeholder in by the
15th, by this Saturday. This Saturday.
Okay.
I mean, the selectmen can still accept articles up to February 15th technically, but that's what we've tried to set as sort of an early indicator as to where things are.
Okay.
All right. Draft warrant then gets submitted to the advisory committee. We then start the CIP process as well, and then we do the formal review of the CIP at the CIP committee in March, on the first Saturday in March. Then we submit those results to the Board of Selectmen for their consideration, and then the advisory committee then gets a look at the CIP after that.
Yeah, I missed highlighting that one, Bill. That's on March 16th if you're looking for it.
That's right. Okay. And then the final recommendation of the budget will come Tuesday, March 29th. That's our plan at this point. And the advisory committee final recommendations will be on the day following that. Final budget documents and warrant will be then sent to the printer in the first weekend in April, and then everything should be pretty much wrapped up at that point. The key date for AdCom members is to make sure your recommendations are done and submitted to the newspaper by April 25th. And then everything gets published and sent to town manager off the print, and warrant posted and sent to the printer by April 28th. The elections occur, which in Foxborough, it's important for people to remember that the elections really start the formal town meeting process. It's really a two-part process. One is the election, and the other one is the formal annual business meeting. So it's a 2-week process starting on May 2nd with the town elections, and then concluding on May 9th with the town meeting. And then everything gets acted on at that point. We then, all the posted warrants are removed on May 16th, and then we do what is known as a review process of how well we've done, and what things can be fixed and what things can be altered to further improve the process. So far, it's worked as a really good review and discussion point process, and people seem to like it. We seem to make little improvements along the way to make it even smoother. Following that, the final real actions taken by the AdCom are to review and approve any reserve fund transfers and town manager transfers at the end of the year, which is really the last meeting in June 28th to be exact, and then really the fiscal year is closed on June 30th. Though technically it remains open until July 15th, according to the state, so we can actually do some last minute changes. What happens is that sometimes bills for the month of June don't really come in until the first week of July, so we have to we try to act on those so we can clean up the balance sheet before we close things out. So that's, in a nutshell, is your fiscal year. So really, when you think about it, the only real month is no action, real significant action is July, August. And in August, actually, now we actually put the word out to see if people are considering anything for a fall town meeting, to see if we can prepare for that. Then in September, we get to the point now where the AdCom will get together in early September, and then if there is going to be a special town meeting, usually held in November, actions need to be taken at that point to start reviewing things and getting everything operational at that point. So really, it's really July and August as the two least amount of work months for the committees, for the selectmen, the administration, and AdCom, and school committee for that matter, for getting things done. So that's it in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman. If there's any, I'll have to take any questions if anybody has.
So I'll open it up to the group first. Well, as they think about that, are there, I have a vague memory, some of the contracts, some of the labor contracts were a year long, right? Are there a fair number of contracts up this year?
Yeah, so all of the contracts are up this year. So
Okay.
so which is interesting in that we sort of line things up to see how we could, maybe get some things. So take all three groups and see if we can try and get some things done, with some coordination. We can't technically do that, but realistically, we're trying to line things up so it does make sense financially. Mike Johns has been working feverishly along with several of the department heads and labor council to work on all of the different contracts. I'll tell you that it's going slow, but he's actually making some progress, and everybody's clear about the fact that our goal this year is to be very conservative in our estimates for any kind of wage increases, even though we're now being pressured by some pretty significant cost of living CIP increases. I think we saw today that the inflation is running around 7% right now, which is a little bit scary for us. So because obviously it's impacting the workforce as well as each of you as you see the cost of everything going up. So that puts a little more pressure on us in terms of trying to get things done in a reasonable way. But certainly we're going to make every effort to try and make that happen.
In the last couple of years, it strikes me that those negotiations or discussions have come to fruition right about the same time we've been trying to wrap this up, right? It's often a fairly close call. Yeah. Okay.
It is typically, and even though we're doing everything we can to try and not make that happen, but
yeah,
but it's usually comes down to whether or not if the groups themselves are motivated to get a contract done for this town meeting. Some of them may hold off and say, look, we're gonna wait and to see how this plays out. And more often than not, though, if a few of them go, that means that we're going to be in a position where it's more difficult for them to get a different number than what's already out there. So obviously, the earlier you get, the early bird gets the worm in this one. So that's the way it goes.
I have a minor point on your spreadsheet, the last line. Shouldn't that be Wednesday, June 29th for the advisory committee? Normally meet on Wednesdays.
Yeah, it's a good point, Jack.
I mean, there might be a reason for leaving it on Tuesday, but.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, you normally do meet on Wednesday, so it could be. I'm not sure why it wasn't the 22nd instead of the 28th, but we can because usually if the selectmen act on the 21st, you can usually look at them on the 22nd, or if you want the week after. So I'll take a look at that again and check with our team tomorrow morning on that.
Well, if it's done on the 22nd, that gives us a fallback week.
That's true.
On the
That's actually
29th.
true.
So, yeah.
That's true. Okay.
Catch. Thanks, Jack. I hadn't made it all the way down the spreadsheet. I was so focused on when the recommendations are due that I hadn't read the rest of it. So good catch there.
Well, we sometimes become blind looking at these charts, so I appreciate the extra set of eyes in that.
Any other questions from the group? So Bill, while they still think about that, I've got one more, which is in the past, you have lined up the department heads to come talk to us.
Sure.
And last year that started around the 26th or 27th. Do you have a calendar for that yet?
So now that you've all seen the calendar for tonight, I can actually start that process.
Okay.
We will then, I think Katie actually tries to do that for you in our office, and she'll try and start lining people up for you. So have you've got all your assignments all figured out? Okay. Yep. So, and do we have that list at this point, Paul? Do we have it?
That is a fair question, Bill. I sent it to you or Katie. I can go back and resend it and make sure.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. If you could do that, it'd probably must be easy to do that.
Yep.
All right. All right. So that is it in a nutshell, folks. I'm happy to help in any way. We're looking forward to working with you again this year. I think I'm anxious for you to see the new budget format that Marie has worked on with George, and it's outstanding. I mean, she's done a terrific job of gathering a lot of detail and information for this process. And the goal has been, since Marie got here, was to try and work towards the GFOA National Budget Award process, which a number of cities and towns in Massachusetts have already achieved. We've never quite reached that goal here, but if you look at the format, the way it's laid out, it actually is absolutely in line with that standard. So we're working towards that. I think we're getting close. I think maybe another year or so we'll be getting even closer, and possibly next year or the year after we'll be there. So getting very close.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Take care, Bill.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And great to see you all. And I'm sure I'll see you soon. All right. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thanks, Bill. Bye. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. We're a minute. We're exactly on schedule. So the next agenda item is the approval of the October 20 minutes from last year. So I'm going to unshare just so I can see all. That's the meeting where we had Chris Gallagher come in and do a quick presentation, and then we voted on all the recommendations for the warrant articles. So I've sent those minutes out a couple of times. So I wanted to see first if anybody had any comments or feedback. Nope, nothing exciting there. We lived that all at once. All right. So I've seen on some of these calls, they do a roll call. I really don't want to do that. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. So somebody make a motion to approve. Okay, second.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, enthusiastically raise your hands.
All right.
Okay, all right, it's unanimous. All right, last agenda item is the financial policies document. So that is the document that mainly put together by the town manager and board of selectmen that gives guidance during the budget cycle. And so I can share my screen if you want to look at it, or we can just talk about it. But that we approved it once, and then an amendment or correction was made to one of the pages. So it needs technically a revisit and a reminder of the discussion. Essentially, we're voting on our endorsement of it or our acceptance of it. We're not approvers in this process. So Marlo asked about that last time, so I wanted to re-mention that. So that's the preamble. Comments, questions?
What was the change, Paul?
It was a clarification that Bill Yukon had asked for, and you want me to just pull it up real quick?
Sure.
That was unenthusiastic, but I will do it anyway.
Sure.
Sure, why not? So just a reminder of what the two main pieces were. One was a reference to corrections on or clarifications on treatment of, I have to go find it there. Anything in bold, font, and underline was an update. So there's two pieces. One is the treatment of the OPEB, right, in terms of applying meals taxes to it directly, and then subsequently to, there's that piece, and then subsequently to, sorry, I apologize. This goes back to the fact that last year, for the first time in memory, we didn't fully fund OPEB up front. And so we were concerned about the meal tax funding. And so we deferred it into the next year, and there was no real guidance around that. And so they added language on that to say that we can push the funding to next year. And then the next piece was using the meals taxes to fund OPEB first, and then the pavement management plan second. And then there is a third piece. Hang on a minute. The third piece is saying for the pavement management program that we are, our guidance is to have at least $1 million per year to maintain the roads. So those are the three pieces. They're all fairly interlinking. I think they came out of some events that a fair number of the members of this committee were involved in during last year's budget.
Yeah,
So
I just want to check in with Jack. Jack, that answers your question from the email, correct?
No, not at all. Not at all. As I asked Bill at the September 29th meeting, the financial policy that we had in front of us did not specify the equal split between OPEB and road-related expenses that the town had been made a commitment to the voters. Now, understand the meals tax, you may not have been at the meeting, but there were over 500 people at that meeting. And it had been defeated twice. The last time the selectmen came forward and said, we will use meal tax only for road-related expenses. That, for example, could be sidewalks and OPEB, and we'll split it equally. That passed, and but is not reflected in the financial policy as it's written. Now, you wonder what happened. I says, well, I've been on the advisory committee now for 3 years, and this is the first time, last September, was the first time I'd heard of the financial policy document. It's used to help guide where funding comes from, but we have not seen it in the past. The fact that it was to be amended, that's why it came to us. Now, we could be, for example, if we followed the commitment made to the voters at town meeting, that could be used, for example, on sidewalks. This town has abysmal sidewalks. They're pitiful. Every town around us pays attention to the sidewalks. We do not. We haven't put any money into it. We have tried to get funding, but the funding agencies look at it, look, you guys don't put any of your own money in it, why should we? And so I would suggest that this, the advisory committee defer approval of the financial policy document until it more accurately reflects the promise made to town meeting. And we actually have a special responsibility there because we are the representatives of town meeting when it's not in session. So I would recommend either no action or a no on this.
Jack, I just want to be specific because I want to be clear, as to exactly what we're saying, whichever we choose. The bold type I see here says that at such time that the OPEB long-term liability obligation is satisfied, with the exception of ongoing required contribution, the entirety of the remaining portion of local option meals tax receipts shall then be dedicated to the funding of the pavement management program for the town. Pavement management shall be included but not be limited to pavement management plan, complete street prioritization plan, sidewalk management plan, and the ADA transition plan. Is your complaint that it does not specifically say that it's split equally? Because this to me reads that if we feed the OPEB, whatever's left of meals tax goes to sidewalks. So I want to be clear that when we say, hey, we voted no action on this, because I want to say, this language right here, we want to say X, Y, Z, and we don't see that there. Because right now, the way I read it is they might think, oh yeah, we dealt with that. We addressed that. And if we come back and say, no, not really, I want to be clear on what we're saying. So what in that language would you think needed to be changed in order to meet what was promised or, what was said at the 2011 town meeting?
That says when I'm 90 years old, we will start to send some of the meals tax money to repairs of roads and streets. What was said at town meeting was we will have a 50-50 split from half of it goes to OPEB, half of it goes to roads. And so that is the way it should be this year on this budget and every year moving forward. Now, it should have been in the past as well, except that nobody sees this financial policy done. Very few people see it. I never saw it until September. So we don't know where the funding sources are when we actually see the budget. Yeah.
Paul, is that how you read that language as well? That means when we fully funded OPEB? Is that how you read that?
Not when, as in, so OPEB's estimated to be fully funded in 2030, right? That's not what it says. We have agreed to, if you look in the other part of the document, agreed to a roughly $1 million assessment every year, right? What it says to me is we'll fund OPEB first, sidewalk second from the meals tax. It's a very meals tax specific provision. I have a lot of comments on this. So first, I wasn't at the 2011 town meeting. Jack is not the only person who has said in public that there was a 50-50 commitment. I know there's a newspaper article out there. It's, to me, Jack, pretty vague. It's basically Kevin getting up there and saying, we'll do 300 there, 300 there. And he may have said separate from the newspaper article, it will be 50-50 going forward. I'm just telling you, that doesn't bear it out. And on top of that, we've had a lengthy conversation with Bill and George on this topic, and they can't find any written commitment or anything that supports that. And let me make one more point before you comment, Jack. Elsewhere in the same financial policy document, there's a commitment to fund at least $1 million on sidewalks, right?
No, there is $1 million from an assortment of sources.
Yep.
That in total. Now that in recent years has been zero for meals tax.
Yep.
And the commitment at town meeting, and that was clearly described in the newspaper as well, that it was the same amount for roads as it was for OPEB. And so Frank Mortimer was made that observation, and I see no reason why we go away from that. Now, it hasn't been implemented in recent years, but it should be, and because that's a commitment that was made.
So Dan, how did you say the obligation was described? So it says obligation must.
So yeah, I was actually, I'm more asking questions and trying to decipher the language because this isn't really my forte, but it says at such time that the OPEB long-term liability obligation is satisfied. Now, I wasn't sure if that meant end 2030 or if that meant when we after we put our million in, does everything else go after? So for example, if we had 2 million from meals tax, 1 million goes to OPEB. All right, now it is 50-50. But and again, I wasn't there in 2011. I have not read the newspaper article. I have heard more than enough people back Jack on this. This isn't something somebody's making up, as much as everyone else is saying we don't have that specifically in writing from anybody in town. There's no reason to think that people are just making this up. I don't think they were.
No, I don't.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't disagree with Jack in that the language does not say that. It really doesn't. Now, if we put in 2.5 million from meals tax every year, and 1 million is going to OPEB, and then the other 1.5 is supposed to be going to the roads, I have no problem with this language. That being said, if it's not going to roads, well, now we have a whole nother problem on our hands. So I'm really more trying to understand. I guess I understand how we got to this point. I'm not exactly sure that language that we changed, and Jack, just correct me if I'm wrong. So this language is bolded, right? That I just described, which means it's new, which means somebody looked at this and said, okay, how can we either find a middle ground, or how can we change this or add language so that people that think we're being unfair will now buy in. So I think people are definitely cognizant of your complaint and of others' complaints about this specific language. I'm not sure this specific paragraph actually addresses it, but I don't know how much money comes in from the meals tax to begin with. So
if you look in recent years, it's about $500,000. So
it's about $500,000.
About $500,000. So it's roughly $250,000 for each is what it would be.
So right now, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but right now, that full $500,000 goes to OPEB.
Yes. Or at least that has been the practice. And whatever that, I say $500,000, it varies, as you know, from one year to the next. But
So,
it's not
right.
Yeah.
We're spending a lot of time on this, and I'm just wondering, is there a decision that we have to make related to this?
I'm going to make a motion. So I'm not interested in spending a lot of energy like trying to explain the town's position, or to Dan's questions what the language is. I just assume they sat down and talked to us about a year ago. I just say have them back in.
Yeah,
That's fine.
So, but what is it that we ultimately have to make a judgment on related to this? When and where do we have to act?
Realistically, these are guidelines that the town manager and the board of selectmen are supposed to follow when setting the budget. And when we make recommendations, we should keep them in our sight, right? So that it's no more than that, Marlo.
right. We're not approving these, right, Paul?
No.
We're just saying that we will adhere to these guidelines. We believe they're in the best interest of the town.
Yep.
That doesn't mean we can't affect the language in them, but
I think endorse is the language. I mean, we went around on this last year. I think endorse is the language I landed on.
But when we actually look at the budget and specific areas of the budget, we can weigh in on if we think enough money is going to sidewalks or not.
Sure.
oh sure,
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Right, but I think Jack's point. This is specifically this conversation has come up at both of the last two town meetings, and there's been conversations about it, but it really hasn't been put to bed. And I kind of agree with you that not that it's a waste of time. I don't think it is. I think we're spending a lot of time on something that appears to be fairly straightforward, right? So, at some point, it just needs to be put in there in not vague terms.
So I think there are slightly two separate points, but I think Jack's not alone in the 500 some odd people who were at that meeting who came away with that impression. And so I think Jack is asking, not just clarity of language, but I think the policy's wrong, I think is what Jack is saying.
That is also true. Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know ultimately what happens if we don't endorse it. I don't know that there's functionally ineffective other than they take the name of the advisory committee off the first paragraph of the doc. But I do think, I know it's a point of concern among a lot of the longer term residents of the town. So I'm certainly fine having them back in and talking about it.
Yeah, Paul, I think the impression that we got last year was that they would basically just take our, did we sign this, right? In the back?
You know, Dan,
Didn't
the
we?
last page of it has a signature. Yeah, we signed it last year.
Yeah, we signed it last year. I think they just take the signature blocks off the back if we don't want to sign it.
Okay, I think that might be true as well.
That's the impression that I got.
I just think it'd be good if we're all aligned. If we end up being unaligned on one topic, that would be, in my experience, a budgetary miracle. And so I'm fine if we land on disagreeing with the way they've articulated the policy. I do want them in here defending it or talking about it, rather than us trying to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being asked to endorse these policies tonight, I've heard enough that I'm not comfortable endorsing if that's what the expectation is.
So
Is-
go ahead.
Is the proper approach a motion to table pending review with the town's financial authorities?
That's exactly right.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Maybe clear it up. Yeah.
It's seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, that was unanimous again. All right, that was exciting. Any other topics to cover that are off the agenda? Any questions about the process? You heard Bill walk through the calendar. Some of you are more familiar with it than others. So I just want to make sure you have a view on what's coming up in the next few months, because they'll be busy.
Well, I have a question. Sharon and I, one of the departments we've got to look at the budget for is SEMRECC. I don't know
Yep.
what that stands for, what function that is.
So that is, I thought I sent you a link, but that's a unified 911 call center. That's 4 of the towns have joined together to have one call center. Is somebody, I'm getting a lot of chatter back.
I think that was me, sorry.
Okay. It's a unified 911 center. And so that's been a pretty big savings to the town. The conversation with them, typically it comes in as an assessment, and we typically ask them how they're doing on their expenses, but it's a little different from them being a direct budget department of the town. And for us, the focus is always, can you get more towns in this? Because every town that comes in lowers our charge. So I think it's about $500,000 a year, 535, 550, something like that is my memory from last year. If I'm dead wrong
Okay.
about that. What's that?
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Southeastern Massachusetts Regional Emergency Communications Center.
I knew that. No, I didn't know that. Can you name the 4 towns, Dan? Easton, Foxborough, Mansfield,
Mansfield.
and somebody.
Norton, right?
Norton, thank you.
Is it
Yes,
Norton?
that's it. Yes, it's
Norton,
Norton.
yeah.
So, and I know at some point I thought maybe Walpole was interested, so. All right. So this is going to be exciting going forward. I really want to see the calendar. My tendency in past years was if my department head wasn't going to come to the AdCom for a month and a half, I admit I slacked a little bit. So it's always good to see that calendar when it comes out from Bill. Jack.
One last question. You left us at the last meeting with the idea that Frank was going to bring in several new members. I don't
Yes.
see any new members tonight.
I've dropped him a couple of notes. I will have to follow up again. I realized I hadn't had a follow-up when the whole thing kicked off. So it would be, you're right, it would be good to get some people in while we're doing the work this time. I should delegate that to Dan. Dan, you want to give Frank a call? No?
I will. I'll call Frank, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Jack, the 3-year members will have to do a 4th year if they can't fill those.
Well, whoever replaces me, Dennis, is going to have a hard time. You're right. If we don't get those filled. All right. Anything else? That's a quick meeting. Nice.
Motion to adjourn?
Yep. Seconded. I guess that's a second from Jack. All in favor? Let's see those hands. Thank you, everyone.